first few pages of a new story I'm working on. My father's patients kept calling me, even weeks after his sudden death. The narcissists, the depressives, the schizophrenics, the obsessive-compulsives, they all wanted to chat. I was no psychiatrist. I wrote copy for a website that sold gourmet foods by mail, like surprise your loved ones with the gift of live Maine lobsters, which was probably the exact opposite of sound psychiatric advice. But I'd left my cell phone on my father's answering machine when I changed the outgoing message. I'd had no idea how else to let his patients know about his fatal heart attack, since he left behind no instructions, just a drawer of files filled with his illegible, microscopic scrawl. And although I hadn't actually expected anyone to contact me if they had any questions, it was just a polite way to soften the blow. Suddenly, I was fielding calls night and day. Who would have thought that I, whose greatest accomplishment was an ode to Vidalia onion marmalade, I who'd been paternally dismissed as scatterbrained and underachieving, I with my nervous nature and peptic ulcer and at times incapacitating aversion to spit on the sidewalk, would have such a talent for soothing troubled souls. I fibbed to the narcissists that my father had spoken glowingly about their attractiveness. I commiserated with the depressives about the fragility of life, the heartbreak of abrupt departures that leave no time for goodbyes. I assured the schizophrenics that their records wouldn't end up in government hands. I set up a schedule for the obsessive-compulsives to call me at precisely the same time every day. In a single afternoon, I talked an agoraphobic into a trip to the grocery store and coaxed a compulsive gambler out of the aqueduct. I wished my father could see how capably I was caring for his patients until they could find a new psychiatrist. I wished he could see the cramps in my fingers and the rash that covered half my ear and the 3,000 extra minutes on my Verizon bill. Wasn't I, in a sense, protecting his legacy? I'd spent a dozen sleepless nights packing up his office, boxing medical texts and encyclopedias, individually bubble wrapping his collection of antique magnifying glasses. Surely the patients deserved the same attention. Even the kleptomaniac, who I suspected had pocketed the missing books from the chess set on my father's desk. I hadn't worked this hard in 20 years, since senior year of high school, after I'd flunked a calculus midterm and my father gave me the silent treatment until I aced the final. My pulse lunged from all the coffee I drank to stay focused. My brain sizzled with neuroses and delusions and complaints about the side effects of Haldol. I had work falling through the cracks, Tuscan truffle paste and cast iron fondue sets awaiting captions. I had a new subscription to Psychology Today, and a welt on my palm from the night my phone got so hot it actually burned my hand, when I spent 2 hours talking down a hypochondriac who was sure she had both thrush and a small bowel obstruction. I thought the welt gave my hand gravity, the skin puckered and roughed up looking. I wished my father were around to admire it. I wished we could have finally had one of those father-daughter moments where your eyes meet and you feel that click of connection in the marrow of your bones. Yes, it's true that in life he had kept his practice separate. The patients told me that before they heard my message, they hadn't known he even had a daughter. And besides the odd incident here or there, like the guy we once saw on the subway in spurs and a cowboy hat who called out, "Howdy, Doc," or a cake that arrived at our apartment one Thanksgiving made out of ground turkey with candied yam frosting, I was hardly ever reminded of their existence. But this wasn't life. This was someplace new with permeable borders. This was a place where I agreed to read the agoraphobic screenplay, where I brainstormed hairstyle and makeup ideas with a trichotillomaniac who'd pulled out her eyebrows. At night, all keyed up, I stared out my window at the sky and tried to imagine my father somewhere up there. I wondered if he'd found my mother, How did that work? Was there some kind of directory? I wondered if they had cream soda there. They'd always complained they couldn't find it here anymore. Then I wondered what it meant that I was a better daughter now, with both of them gone, when I wasn't, strictly speaking, a daughter anymore. One of the patients, a bipolar graphic artist named Paul, spoke so wistfully about this miniature phrenology head in my father's office that I offered to unpack it and send it to him. Save the postage, he said. I'd give my right eye to meet my brilliant shrink's brilliant progeny, and invited me on a walk the next night with him and his dog, a Great Dane named Vanya. I admit I looked forward to it. 2 months of disembodied conversations had made me hungry for the sight of a mouth in motion, for eyes that blinked or darted or widened, anything animated. Plus, I liked Paul's exuberance. It cheered me up. Maybe it was a little feverish. Everything was amazing. Liquid Band-Aids, the chicken-flavored toothpaste he used to brush Vanya's teeth, burnt orange Crayola crayons, a shop on 16th Street that sold nothing but umbrellas. But it made me feel hopeful. So many people went around tied up in knots, shoulders up at their ears, half asphyxiated with dread. I hadn't heard any dread in Paul's voice. I waited outside the 72nd Street entrance to Central Park, shivering in the February cold. It was 10 minutes after 8. The wind gusted, banging through the trees. I took my phone out of my handbag and set it to vibrate, then stowed it in my pants pocket so I could feel any calls that came in. I imagined the patients gathered at my hip, shielded from the elements. A dark-haired man in his early 40s approached, but he was too slight to be Paul, who told me he had twice in the past 5 years gained and lost 80 pounds, but was still decidedly husky. Then I heard my name being called. He came racing across the street, a bright red scarf wound around his neck and his coat flapping open in the wind, an immense dog the size of a newsstand panting at his side. He was husky in the shoulders and jowls, but I was surprised by how much better looking he was than I'd expected. For some reason, I'd had in mind this wild-haired, oddball dentist I used to go to, who conducted the piped-in opera with his water pick, and who I later found out had a serious addiction to laughing gas. Paul stopped short about a foot away from me. His eyes were the kind of brown that glinted hazel in the streetlights. "Oh my God," he said, "it's astounding. You remind me so much of your dad." He held the handle of the leash out to Vanya, who took it in her mouth. "I hope you'll forgive us for being late. I've been up 3 days straight. I have about 1 billion Gregorian chants on CD that I'm finally getting around to labeling. If I listen to one more psalmody or canticle, my head will explode." He studied my face with this intense, blazing concentration. "It really is incredible," he said. "I swear I'd have known you anywhere." I felt a little breathless. My heart was jumping. His high-octane energy must have been contagious. And the Gregorian chant stuff, the impressive arcaneness of it, was weirdly appealing. I pictured his brain as this oversized place full of intricate stairways and elaborate gears and pulleys. Also, being told I looked like my father. I thought the resemblance had been erased years before, when I'd had the bumpy nose I'd inherited from him surgically pruned. Was it growing back? The possibility gave me a jolt of pleasure. There'd been enough years of bunny-like cuteness. I could use some dignity. "Let's walk down by the boat pond," Paul said. "It's amazing at night. Wait till you see it. The wind hits the water and it shines. There's starlight in the trees. Your father saved my life. I have so much to tell you. Are you hungry? Do you want a pretzel? I know an amazing pretzel cart that stays open late." He took the leash out of the dog's mouth and said, "Vanya, mush," and we went into the park.